Hey everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Awesome having you here again. And today we're going to talk about a topic that I think is extremely important, and that is disciplining our thoughts. Now, as you probably know, we are consistently busy wrestling with our thoughts. When they are good, we experience life as good and take positive action. When they are negative, we experience life as stressful and unsatisfying, and again, those thoughts guide our actions and influence our experience of life. And although we are constantly busy and intertwined with our thoughts, most of the time we just allow them to run the show without actively intervening. I almost think of it like a child driving a car without being able to see over the dashboard. And we are just the terrified passengers sitting on our hands without taking action to stop the car and gain back control. And because our thoughts have such a massive impact on our quality and experience of life and directly influence our actions and reactions, I think it is of vital importance that we learn and practice how to deal with them. In this episode today, I will share my thoughts on thoughts and the tools I use to help me deal with them. This will, of course, also help with emotional regulation. So these thoughts and these tools will help you to move from a disempowered to an empowered state, and it will allow you to take back control of that car. Put that toddler in the back seat where it belongs. I'm your host, Mandy. This is the Self-Powered Podcast, and let's get right into it. Like I said in the intro, our thoughts directly influence how we experience life. The situation is always neutral until we have a thought about it. And depending on what thought we have, we will then experience the situation as either good or bad, and then we take action or inaction from that space. Now, a while ago, I had this very empowering realization, and I recognized that I don't have to take every thought I think seriously. There was this moment when I had this emotionally charged thought that would usually send me spiraling into a dark place of self-loathing and severe dissatisfaction. But before I went into that spiral, I found a gap, like a little pause where I recognized, hey, I can think this thought, but it doesn't mean that I have to take it seriously. It doesn't mean that just because I think it, it's true. And even though I can't make it go away immediately, I can choose not to give it energy and instead just keep on doing what I need to do. Here's an example of where I've applied this. So I've had sleeping problems my whole life. It was really, really bad when I was a child, and as I grew older, I learned to manage it a bit better. But it's still something that is very present in my life today. Now, I often have nights or consecutive nights where I really struggle to sleep, and it's not necessarily because of stress. Often it is for positive reasons, when my mind is thinking of ways I can improve my business, or just those deep philosophical thoughts that stimulate my mind, and then I can't settle down. But I'm sure you know that as the night gets darker and our body battery lower, our thoughts get darker and lower too. You know, at 2 o'clock in the morning, our thoughts aren't necessarily great, right? Everything looks super daunting. We get this almost anxiety attack about something so random in our lives. And then we latch onto a thought and then allow it to take us down this very dark spiral. Can't even tell you how many times I've experienced this, and it's not fun. And I'm sure each and everyone watching this or listening to this have experienced it too. Now, where this thought of not taking my thoughts seriously has become so helpful is in moments like that. Now, when I'm awake at 2 o'clock in the morning and I think my whole life is going to shit, I tell myself, oh, this is a 2 o'clock in the morning thought. And it is so amazing because I can actually detach from the thought in that moment. It's just because of the current circumstances that I'm in at this moment that I'm thinking this thought. And because of that, I don't have to attach any value to it. Now, what is important is that I don't necessarily feel better. right? Because I'm still in the state of sleep deprivation, I still don't feel good, but I can create enough distance between my experience and the thought to say, you know what, this is just a thought. I know as soon as the sun comes up, I'm going to feel better again. So I'm just going to lie with this and let it be and not attach any further meaning to it. And I'm just not going to allow this to spiral into the usual hellfire. Since I've had that realization, I've applied it so many times in my life, and also I've become very aware of how my thoughts are influenced by certain circumstances. So if I had certain conversations during the day or fed my mind certain content from social media or books, for example, I recognized that the thoughts I was thinking were different from what I would usually think. And that awareness just helped me so much to be very vigilant with the thoughts that I do believe and the ones I actually give attention and energy to. For example, if it's a 2 o'clock thought, I would label it as that and I don't give it any more attention. And I think that's the important part. We might not be able to fully control our thoughts, but we can choose which thoughts we give energy. Now, let's move that into practice. I want you to start becoming aware of your thoughts, especially those highly emotionally charged ones, right? Those ones that usually have the tendency to let you go into a spiral where you feel so out of control. And in that moment, just analyze it a little bit. Take a step away and ask yourself, why am I thinking this thought right now? Is it because I'm on my own and lonely? Is it because it's 2 o'clock in the morning? Is it because I haven't eaten yet? Is it because I just had a conversation with a very negative person? Or did I just watch too much true crime? What could make me think this way right now? Maybe you've got the flu, you've been under the weather, you've had a very stressful time. Now, once you've thought about it, then decide if this thought should be taken seriously. And again, it might not go away, but you can choose to not give it any more energy. And then just remind yourself there are a million different thoughts that I could think in that moment. And thoughts are just thoughts until you attach value and meaning to them. And exactly that brings me to the next point. Another thing that I realized about my thoughts is that in any given situation, when a thought comes up, I have the opportunity to think a different thought related to that situation. You know how sometimes people are in the exact same situation, but their reaction to it is completely different? And that is because they think different thoughts about the situation. I mean, just the realization that someone else could think differently than me already devalidates my thought, right? It already shows me that my thoughts aren't to be taken that seriously. They aren't the ultimate and the only viable thought that I could think. If I attach a negative meaning to a situation, or if I take a thought and say, okay, I'm 100% sure that it's accurate, then that's going to be my experience of the situation. Okay, stick with me. Let me give you an example. I always tell this story to my clients, and it comes from a childhood experience of mine. So I wasn't the most driven student in school. In fact, I just really hated school. But fortunately, I was never too bad at it. And I usually had an average of above 80%. Now, my father was a highly intelligent man. And one day I came home with my scorecard and my average was 84% for the year. So my dad looked at my marks and said, "Oh, Mandy, that's really good, but you could really do so much better." Now, I remember my mom being really upset with him about it because it was a really good score and she thought that he was breaking me down and that he was making me feel like I was not good enough. However, in that moment, my thought was not, "Oh no, I can never do enough," or "I'm never good enough, I might as well just give up." My thought was, "Oh wow, I've got so much respect for my dad. He is such an intelligent man. And if he tells me I can do better, he must see something in me that I don't." And I found that encouraging. That moment actually gave me confidence. I just have to put a disclaimer here. It didn't make me study more in school because I just didn't click with the system, if I can say it that way. But that moment gave me confidence and a feeling of, hey, there might be more to me. And I was excited about the possibility that there could be more within me that I just haven't dug out yet. Now, for another child in exactly the same situation, it could have had the opposite effect very easily, right? Maybe you have experienced something like that in your childhood. They could have interpreted it as, my dad doesn't think I'm good enough, and no matter how hard I work, he's always going to see something negative. Same situation, two very different interpretations of it. And those thoughts will then have a direct influence on how we perceive ourselves and the actions we take going forward. So my point with this is that a situation is always neutral until we attach a thought to it, and that thought will carry a certain meaning for us. Now, if different people can think different thoughts in the same situation, it means those thoughts are accessible to us as well. You can choose for the situation to be something positive or constructive, no matter what the thought is. Even if your first thought is, oh man, I'm not good enough. Your second thought, the one you choose, could be, oh, but hang on, when someone says I could do better, they probably really believe in me. Or if my first thought is, damn, I really screwed this up, I can choose the second thought to be, okay, this didn't go very well. I'm going to evaluate it and see how I can improve in the future. My challenge for you here is, whenever you have a thought about a situation, ask yourself, is this the only viable thought in a situation like this? The answer is always no. And once you recognize that, then choose 3 different possible thoughts that are either neutral or positive. And if that's hard for you, just ask yourself, what would someone else who didn't see this as a big deal think? Or someone I admire and respect who's usually cool and calm in situations like that, what would they say and think? And then you think those thoughts. And the awesomeness of this is that even if you don't believe the positive ones, just the fact that you showed your brain, hey, what you initially thought isn't necessarily true, because there are other options too. You break your initial conviction, and that creates confusion, which allows you to break free from your initial reaction. Good stuff, man. I tell you, good stuff. Okay, one last angle that I just want to touch on is why we shouldn't hate our negative thoughts, and instead of trying to avoid them, rather teach ourselves to work with them in a constructive way. We tend to want to avoid negative thoughts, right? So when we get a negative thought, we say, oh no, I don't want to think about it. I'm going to try not to think about it. I really hate thinking this and I don't want to feel this way. But similar to our bodies giving us pain as a signal that there might be something wrong, our brain gives us negative thoughts to warn and protect us. So in my opinion, every negative thought has a positive intent. And if we recognize the positive intent behind the negative thought, then we can work with it in a constructive way. Let me put this into an example. So let's go back to our early tribal times and imagine you and I are sitting with our little community, maybe around a campfire, just having a nice sundowner. I don't exactly know what the beverage of choice was back then. And then you hear something rustling in the bushes behind you. Now, just imagine your first thought in that moment would be, oh, I'm sure it's just a little cute bunny. Or it's probably just Bambi coming to say hello. I don't think our species would have survived very long, right? In that moment, you want to think, oh shit, this is probably a lion and I'm probably gonna die. Because when you think that, your body and brain gear up for fight or flight, which facilitates your survival. So negative thoughts aren't only negative, and we should learn to appreciate them for what they are trying to give us, and then deal with them accordingly by saying, well, thank you, negative thought. I see that you're trying to point something out. I'm going to think of a solution for that, or I'll talk to someone else to see if it's reasonable to think that way. So that way you're telling your brain, hey, I'm acknowledging what you're warning me about, but here's a solution. Or, we'll be okay either way. If, however, we ignore the signal, we try to avoid the negative thought, that alarm will just become louder and louder because our brain is freaking out and is trying to tell us, look, you might be in grave danger, please respond. So do yourself a favor and respond in a positive way. The point is, challenge yourself to look for the positive intent your brain has by giving you those thoughts and then work with it. So to wrap this up, remember, you don't have to take every thought seriously. Stop yourself from spiraling. You don't have to believe everything your mind throws at you. There are a million thoughts. Maybe it just chose a crappy one in that moment. Or your thoughts were influenced by your circumstances of the day. Also remember that thoughts are just thoughts until we give them meaning. And then instead of fighting negative thoughts or fearing them, recognize that they usually have a positive intent. They're just trying to protect you, even if they go about it in a messy way. The key is learning to work with them and not against them. Notice them, question them, and challenge yourself to choose empowering meanings and alternatives, and also decide which thoughts you choose to give energy. The more you do this, the more you recondition your mind and you actually train your brain to respond in a way that actually serves you. Well, that's it for today. I hope this episode resonated with you. Let me know. Leave a comment, share your thoughts. If you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss the next episode. Thank you for hanging out with me again today. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. And as always, remember to stay powered by progress. I'll catch you again in the next one. Bye. And that's a wrap.